It seems as if this entire thing is at a critical point right now where it could tip in either direction, and Johnson and this gentleman seem to be doing their best to try to keep this crowd under control. More people trying to approach the emergency vehicle. And again, the gentleman with the bullhorn urging everyone to get out of the way. I can tell you there's probably a lot of media crowding on the side here as well, with cameras as well. Now here come more officers. They're coming out. They have weapons. They are going to make arrests. They're making arrests. Right now they're grabbing people and making arrests, and they are handcuffing them and taking them back. I don't know what this will do to the crowd, but tensions are really high right now, and there's a lot of anger all of a sudden that's spilled out into the street. More police are working their way out into the crowd, and they are pushing everyone back. They're pushing everyone back. It is an incredibly chaotic scene right now. Everybody's moving back real quick again. The police are going back in their lines. We're still hearing that piercing siren sound. There's a lot more police officers here that have come streaming down West Florissant to support that line of officers that were here at Ferguson Avenue. The protesters are not going away. They seem to be moving forward. Now an armored vehicle is coming down this way. I got to move out of the street. It's coming this way. I'm going to retreat back over here. And I have a better view now of what I can see. They're still making efforts to try and move that crowd back away from that line of armored officers. Right now, it seems as if I'm not seeing any more bottles or things being thrown at the police. A lot of people here are making a tremendous effort to try and calm everybody down. That piercing noise just got a little louder. And now that line seems to be retreating back to a distance here that police maybe feel comfortable with at this point. I hope you guys can still hear us and still get this, because it really is quite interesting. It's quite interesting what's going on. We really hit a point here where it seemed as if things were going to tip into another night of violence, but it may be at this point. It's been avoided right now. Now, I can tell you there seems to be a great deal of anger in the crowd as it continues to retreat back up West Florissant. The police are not moving. They are still holding their police line. We are at the corner of Ferguson Avenue in West Florissant. We are right in front of a Family Dollar store that was actually open for business today and so far has not been damaged. Okay, that piercing noise is getting louder again. It seems to be coming from that large armored vehicle right in the center of the street. The crowd, some in the crowd holding their hands up, milling around. This was not the way things had been going for most of the day and into the early evening hours here in Ferguson. State police had managed to keep the street clear. They had let the protesters continue to march on the sidewalks as long as they kept moving. They did not want people standing around. Now another man is approaching the police line with his hand up. He's been told to stop, and he is gesturing to the officers. And now he's going back. But for the most part, those protests seemed to go on. They were loud. There were a lot of people. But people kept moving on the sidewalks, and the police managed to keep the streets clear. And we saw the officers out here mingling. Captain Johnson was out here after sundown, talking with a lot of people. But as I mentioned, a large crowd just started to form in this intersection about 15 minutes ago. Things started getting a little agitated. We saw what looked like a fight or a lot of scuffling break out, and then bottles started being thrown at the police. And once we heard some glass bottles crash, that's when we saw the police go back and get their helmets and their gear, and then those armored vehicles seemingly just came out of nowhere, pulled right up with their bright spotlights on, and now we've got this large truck with that piercing siren noise right now. But everything seems to be in a standoff position right now. We're not seeing the mingling of police and protesters that we had seen all evening. It's almost as if both sides have gone to their own side and they're staring each other down at this point.
Matt, you're doing an outstanding job of reporting from the scene. Steve and Sharon in studio as we begin News 4 at 10. Give us an idea how many protesters, how many police are in the standoff here, and do the protesters outnumber the police by a wide number?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. I wish I could tell you. I don't have the high vantage point where I can actually look down West Florissant to get an idea, but it looks as if, well, I mean, the protesters are scattering all around. I mean, it's not a solid group of protesters that's in front of us. I would guess maybe 1,000 people here right now immediately facing the police, and it looks as if there are at least a few hundred police officers out here, all in front of those armored vehicles right now. But there are so many more protesters, Steve, further back up West Florissant, further back up towards the Quick Trip. So it's hard to say, and looking down in the dark, but there are certainly a lot of people here tonight. You know, there is no curfew, and so we had been seeing an endless stream of people leaving and people coming in, going back and forth. We actually saw a lot of clergy and ministers here. Now the armored vehicle is making an attempt. It wants to move everybody out of the street, and they are making an attempt to move everyone out of the street.
And we just heard
right
some
now.
shots.
And that's making a lot of people angry right now, I can tell you. That is making a lot of people angry.
Armet Tezzi
It just
live.
Now that armored vehicle went straight down West Florissant, and I don't know if it's answering an emergency call or what it's doing. It's now taking a position up in a parking lot near the McDonald's, it looks like, a side position from these protesters. The other officers remain, and the other armored vehicles remain right now. I'm just getting reunited with my photographer, Scott Thomas. We had gotten separated, but he kept bringing the pictures to you. Scott, we're on live, so now we got another event going on out in the street. It looks like we've got protesters holding hands, and I don't know if they're getting ready to pray or if they're doing a form of peaceful protest. But as I look to my right, I can see these officers. They certainly seem ready to go. And there's the siren again. And they're not moving. They are. Go ahead. Yeah, Steve, it looks as if these are a group of the peaceful protesters who are now making a human chain and actually making an effort to police themselves, and they are pushing the crowd north on West Florissant. They're pushing them away.
We got a whole.
Now I can see lights on the other end, police lights on the other end, but they are pushing this crowd away from these police officers.
Matt, we want to
continue to move and not break their line. Yeah.
Matt, we'll step away from you for just a moment. Julian Johnson is about 3 to 4 blocks away in West Florissant. You see a line of police cars heading, we believe, toward Julian's position. And Julian, do we understand that you heard gunshots within the last few minutes?
Steve, that's right. We're at the corner of West Florissant and Canfield, and just a few moments ago, we heard several flurries of gunshots. We're not sure if that's with this group of about 9 or 10 officers, possibly 12, have just rushed down West Florissant to get to. But again, there were about, I'd say, 9 gunshots that we heard on this end. That's further down about a quarter mile from where Matt Cesney is up the street. Right now, you're seeing them gather at the burned QT at North Winds Estates Drive right there at the corner of West Florissant and North Winds Estates Drive. It looks like they're setting up, possibly positioning in some way to possibly deal with these protesters right now. As I was coming down to this location, we saw hundreds of protesters walking away from us toward Matt's location. So that was that skirmish up there that they had with police. But all of a sudden, when we heard those gunshots, the officers took off in this direction. So we have officers here also in the parking lot that we're set up in here at the corner of Canfield and West Florissant. And you can see there's just people that are out here, not even protesting, but just trying to see exactly what's going on. We're not sure if they're a part of the peaceful protesters or a part of the people who are causing trouble. You can see 2 more, that's a county police and a state trooper rolling out of here. There's going to be 2 more state trooper vans that come out here. And again, they're also going further up West Florissant toward West Florissant and Chambers. We're not sure if they might be trying to protect that Delwood border because they don't want these protesters like they did last night to leave Ferguson and go into Delwood to possibly cause more trouble. We saw looting at the Delwood market last night, and police are trying to put a stop to that, Sharon and Steve.
All right, Julian Johnson there. You heard him say he heard as many as 9 shots fired. Police at that burned out QT trying to get their tactical response together. Julian Johnson, a quarter of a mile away from our Matt Cesney, where there was a flurry of activity. About 9:40, you said, Matt. The crowd began to grow and bottles were thrown.
Yes, Sharon, we're hearing another loudspeaker announcement from the police asking people to disperse. It looks as if it's slowly happening. There are some people who are still trying to defy it by walking in the middle of the street, but for the most part, this crowd has cleared out and is making West Florissant clear again. But the police once again have not moved. They're at the ready. They have a straight line all the way across. And now the announcement is for us, for the reporters, to return to the side of the road and to clear the street as well. And we're complying. We're on the corner. There are a lot of people now walking around with handkerchiefs over their faces. This is obviously something that they've experienced over the last couple of days, the smell and the sting of tear gas, and many people seem to be prepared for it at this point. But right now we continue to wait. I look over at this line of police officers, and they are no more than 100 feet away from where I stand, and 100 feet in that direction are the protesters who are now still clearing out the street and moving off onto the side. But the thing to note at this point is that the police have not done anything yet. All they have done is assemble across the street, stare down the protesters, ask them to disperse, but there's been no tear gas, no flash bombs, no smoke bombs, nothing like that at this point. They continue to remain there. Here comes another armored vehicle coming out into the street. There's a bullhorn announcement for people to go home. And it is now beginning to leave. Maybe there's a sense of a little de-escalation from this right now. A few more people are still trying to come out into the middle of the street. Others are putting their arms around them, trying to compel them to go back onto the sidewalk and not escalate the situation. But there are an awful lot of police officers. Now, they do seem to be a little more relaxed than they were about 5 minutes ago, and you can probably see that from the pictures that you were seeing live. I'm going to take you over here a little bit, and you can begin to see what's going on in the street at this point. There are still a few people in the street, but for the most part, that street is clear, and the large group of protesters that were here have now dispersed under the orders of the police department and are now off all on the side of the street on the sidewalks.
Matt, thank you very
much. Another armored vehicle, Scott, to your right, another armored vehicle is making its way through.
Matt, thank you very much. We're going to get back to you in a second. We want to head down to Julian Johnson, who's just a few blocks away from Matt Stesny. Earlier, saw a line of police cars going right by you, Julian. You heard as many as 9 gunshots off in the distance. Update us now since the last time we talked to you. What are you seeing? What's the scene there?
Steve, what I'm seeing right now is a large group of protesters screaming, "United we stand, divided we fall." You can see them carrying the American flag upside down. We've seen a lot of people, as Matt said, with gas masks on, with bandanas covering their faces, with surgical masks covering their faces in anticipation of tear gas. We haven't seen any tear gas yet, but everyone is prepared. And we don't know where this group is now heading, but it's heading toward at least the direction of that burned QT. We don't know if they're going to stop there or keep moving, but there's officers in that direction. There could be some sort of confrontation. We're not exactly sure. As I said before, we've heard several gunshots. Those officers rushing toward our direction after those gunshots went off. Now this large group of people moving away from where Matt was.
Julian, let's go back to Matt Stesny right now. We're going to cut you off because we're learning of more arrests. Matt?
Out of the street because now there's more media in the street than protesters. Captain Johnson is out in the middle now once again, as I mentioned. No body armor, no helmet whatsoever. He is out directing his men and women, telling them where to go, directing the media off to the side. But certainly some arrests were made. I couldn't see how many arrests were made, but there were some arrests. Another person with a bullhorn urging people to go back. So once again, the scene has escalated again, and it is tense. And we don't know what the next move is going to be by the protesters or by the police at this point. But as that armored vehicle moved on, now we're getting the call to move back. Looks like a gentleman with a state police logo on his shirt asking people to move back. The people who are arrested have already been taken away and put in police vehicles. All right. Yeah, we're getting advised to move back and stay out of the street.
Matt, let me ask you a question as you're moving back here.
There's a lot of yelling going on, a lot of confusion in the street.
Just a few minutes ago, Matt.
People are attempting to take control of the situation.
Matt, just a few minutes ago, things seemed to be calm out there. The protesters had left the street, gone off to the side of the road. Was there one incident? Was there anything that you could see that brought the protesters back closer to the police and escalated tensions?
If you will, with the police continues.
All right, Matt Stesny, let's recap. If you're just joining us, you're watching News 410. Sharon Reed alongside Steve Savard. Once again, here we find ourselves again live in Ferguson, already at about 9:40 p.m. As you're looking at these live images, there was a dust-up. Police moved in, made several arrests, bottles thrown, and then a quarter of a mile away where our Julian Johnson is standing, he heard it is 9 gunshots. Saw a flurry of activity. Police cars going up West Florissant towards Canfield, where the shots purportedly came from. And this scene that you're watching play out here, Matt Stesny says the tensions are high. There's an ebb and flow, Steve.
Yep.
He used the word anger. They seem to escalate when they see armored vehicles. Here we go again.
Yeah, about 10 minutes ago, it seemed like police had the situation under control. The protesters had receded. Some of them looked like they had left the area. Now, police aggressively walking down the street again and trying to clear, it looks like both even the media and protesters. But this scene seems to be changing every 5 minutes, and I think Matt's been on top of it, almost giving us a play-by-play, if you will, of what's going on. Just moments ago, before we went back to Matt, we saw an arrest, 2 police officers taking a man away. I don't know how many people have been arrested at this point, but clearly more than one. There have been several people already arrested here just in the 15 or 20 minutes that Matt says he's been reporting from that scene at West Florissant and Ferguson.
It does seem tonight there's a shorter window. Police moving in, making arrests. That includes journalists who were warned very strongly, and you saw some of that play out moments ago here live. They want journalists in a certain area, and they definitely do not want them in the street.